The origins of blackface arguably go back to Charles Matthews, an English comedian who first created black stage characterizations from observations he made while visiting America in 1822. He studied African American dialect, songs, and folklore. In Trip to America, he performed a popular song called Possum Up a Gum Tree with a black dialect in blackface. By the late 1820s, George Nichols and Bob Farrell wrote Zip Coon, employing a melody from an Irish song, Sitcha Gittin' Upstairs. George Washington Dixon, J.W. Sweeney, and of course, Thomas D. Rice traveled the country and portrayed images of blacks while performing alleged Negro songs. In 1828, Thomas Rice claimed he saw an old black man with a deformed right shoulder and a stiff knee doing an odd dance and singing a song.
Every time I wheel about a Jim Crow, I went down to the river. I didn't mean to stay, but there I saw so many gals I couldn't get away. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about a Jim Crow. Give me back my clothes, please.
Rice tried to make himself look like the man that he supposedly saw, and he used clothes from another black man to perform. It ultimately came out that he took the song and dance from John Picayune Butler. Thomas Rice's performances of Jump Jim Crow became a public success, and he toured, performing it from New York City to London. Blackface performers accumulated popularity throughout the entire 1830s, and they influenced outlandish portrayals of African Americans on stage. Blacks were depicted as inferior to whites and used as comic relief. Frederick Douglass called blackface performers, quote, "the filthy scum of white society who have stolen from us complexion denied to them by nature, in which to make money and pander to the corrupt tastes of their white fellow citizens." End quote. In 1843, 4 experienced blackface circus performers took the stage in New York City. Billy Whitlock played the banjo, Dick Pelham played the tambourine, Dan Emmett, who later wrote Dixie, the Confederate national anthem, played the fiddle, and Frank Brower played the bone castanets. They called themselves the Virginia Minstrels and were an instant success. They claimed their music, dancing, and comedy were the, quote, sports and pastimes of the Virginia-colored race through the medium of songs, refrains, and ditties as sung by Southern slaves, end quote. Northern whites didn't understand what slaves were like, and they wanted to believe that they were different from them. They wore ragtag garments that didn't fit well, and they spoke in black dialect. They were contorting their bodies, hollering wildly, bulging their eyes out and their mouths, spreading their legs, and moving compulsively around the stage. They functioned like 4 solo performers together, and after a prosperous tour, the group broke up. They left behind a public thirsty for more minstrel shows and a market that gave rise to many imitators. In 1844, just a year after the first minstrel show, the blackface troupe, the Ethiopian Serenaders, performed for the amusement of President Tyler at the White House. Minstrelsy, before the Civil War, was extremely popular and a national phenomenon. It developed in the big cities of the Northeast, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York City. You had the Ordway Aeolians in Boston, where a man named Johnny Pell performed one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells. You also had Hooley minstrels in Brooklyn and E.P. Christie minstrels in New York City. Sanford Minstrels in Philadelphia was likewise a thriving company. Here's a picture of the owner, Samuel Sanford, as a minstrel black woman character. He is the Yalla Girl character, which I will go into depth with later. Minstrelsy was ubiquitous, and people were obsessed with it. When a minstrel show was coming to town, it would be all that everyone would speak about. As an establishment, it helped whites deal with notions and concerns. It reinforced beliefs of white supremacy and satisfied curiosities about black people. Minstrels shaped white views of blacks and plantation life with eye-popping caricatures that would captivate and incite vocal interactions with the audience. You know, the minstrels also conformed with the public opinion. Large populations of whites were yet unfamiliar with black people and misperceived minstrels as real African Americans. Early minstrels recognized this, and they made it apparent to their audience that the only thing black about them was the material that they were employing and the cosmetics. This is why sheet music showed minstrels in blackface and then without.
Oh, just a minute. Why, here's two familiar faces, Walter Catlett and Willie Collier.
Some of the early minstrel troupes utilized the songs of Stephen Foster, whose music provided the minstrel show a more passionate and dramatic feel than the fast-paced jokes and uncontrolled Virginia minstrel-style performances. Foster grew up a blackface performer with his first performance at age 9. As a child, he met Thomas Rice, and he tried to sell him some songs. Although Rice didn't buy any songs, Foster later discovered success with songs like Old Uncle Ned and Camptown Races. Foster created songs about stress-free plantation dwelling where the family lived. Slaves, in his writings, were comfortable and satisfied. Ex-slaves were yearning to return home to the plantation. His writing and selling of music for minstrel shows earned him the title, the father of the American music industry.
What's a minstrel man?
A minstrel man, son, is a man who made everybody happy. Sometimes he got in a little trouble doing it.
In 1850, the minstrel show had developed into a 3-part show. The first part starts with the company coming out on stage to form a semicircle.
What kind of chair is that?
Why, that's an interlocutor's chair.
What's an interlocutor?
Why, an interlocutor is a man with a pleasing voice and magnetic personality. He introduces the acts.
The interlocutor would be seated in the center and was the master of ceremony. The interlocutor is proficient in language and he displays class and dignity. On both ends of the semicircle are Bones and Tambo, the end men. Named after the instruments that they would play, they put makeup on their face to look like they had big eyes and big lips with ridiculous flamboyant clothes. They spoke in heavy black dialect and made excessive movements and gestures. There were comedians who performed impromptu and played off of the interlocutor. Their snapbacks at the interlocutor appealed to the anti-intellectual and the anti-elitist. When the interlocutor corrected the end men, the audience could join in feeling superior to the stupid nigga. Next would come gags, humorous songs, serious songs, and dancing. The vocals were done by individuals, but supported by an entire cast singing the chorus. Stunts and the music were all in Negro idiom, but there was also material that was done without it that commented on social and political issues. The first act would come to a close with a big song and dance. The second part of the show was called the Olio. It was a variety segment that contained the stump speech that one of the end men would give. Over the years, the stump speaker became a unique position. Some would limit their stump speeches to nonsense, while others would use a fury of nonsensical words to denounce serious issues. In true absurd fashion, people expected the stump speaker to just fall off the podium and onto the floor at the end of the speech, and they usually did so. The third part of the show was a one-act skit based on a plantation romance. Later, the standard became a rendition of the song Lucy Long, made famous by Christie's Minstrels.